Tonight's first order of business, images of daycare workers in Quebec taking to the streets, even allowing for the amazingly low rates of pay that anything related to children seems to warrant. Many parents in that province were shocked at just how ill-paid the government-subsidized daycare workers are. At $12 an hour, with allegations of uncounted overtime, you'd be better off pouring coffee. With national daycare now being mooted, it has us wondering if taxpayers will insist that affordable daycare doesn't also involve exploiting a group of workers. Welcome to The Exchange. Parents in Quebec were left in the lurch this morning. Home daycare workers, almost 14,000 of them, walked off the job for a one-day province-wide strike. That could affect up to 90,000 kids and, of course, their parents. Demonstrations halted traffic in downtown Montreal and Quebec City in one of many work stoppages staged over the last 2 weeks. Today's was prompted when the government canceled a negotiating session. The two sides have been talking for more than a year, and of course the big issue is money. At the moment, home daycare workers in Quebec are paid $12 an hour for a 35-hour week. They're demanding $15 an hour, closer to the national average for their peers, or $16.50 an hour, or about what a data entry clerk makes. The workers also want recognition that they actually clock closer to 50 hours a week when you factor in time spent doing things like cleaning or grocery shopping. Quebec is the only province with a universal daycare program. It ensures parents pay a subsidized rate of $7.30 a day per child. The NDP actually proposed last week a similar model be applied across the country and cap daycare costs at $15 a day. That had some parents' ears perking up. Canadians pay some of the highest daycare fees in the world. Average monthly cost in Ontario is $1,150. In BC, $1,040. It can get as low as $630 in Manitoba. Quebec is the exception, of course, where fees average $152 a month. Good for parents, but you may get what you pay for. One researcher found 61% of Quebec's daycare meets a minimal standard. A lousy wage in a high-stress job makes it hard to recruit high-quality staff, apparently. That's troubling. Canada already has a severe shortage of trained early childhood educators. Now, of course, talk of a national daycare program is only possible because Canada expects to be deficit-free very soon. The childcare proposal came courtesy of the NDP, but it isn't alone in planning ways to spend money we have yet to see. From the Conservatives, we could see new tax cuts, of course, and from the Liberals, promises of spending on infrastructure and education. When pressed just how expensive those spending plans could be, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau suggested he might claw back tax breaks that had already been handed out. So what's the political X factor on that? It's time for Evan Solomon's take. And Evan, I'm curious, we have seen politicians introduce taxes that they promised not to introduce and survive that politically, but clawing back taxes is a pretty tough sell. What's your take on what happened here?
Well, first of all, everything in the next year will be filtered through the political X factor. It's an election year, so every policy that affects business will have to go through this political filter, and that's what you and I are going to be speaking about. In particular, Trudeau was speaking about the Conservatives' long-standing promise to introduce income splitting. That would allow certain families, to get some extra income and write off one parent that stays at home. The problem here, Amanda, is it only benefits a certain number of people, and Trudeau has often said he would not support that and he would roll that back. So the whole political battle is, how will each party spend the surplus? And this is just part of that battle. Yeah, well, we're going to be talking about this for months and months and months, of course. But it's interesting on the income splitting. That was, of course, one of the last things Jim Flaherty did before he stepped aside and then died prematurely, but was to raise questions about whether he thought income splitting was actually fair. Anytime somebody says, you've got a tax break and we're going to take it away, it reads badly politically. In this case, income splitting actually benefits wealthy people, in some ways even more than the middle income people. So I wonder whether this isn't one case where it might work. It benefits wealthy people, obviously, because they have one parent at home instead of two parents in the workforce. The other thing it does, though, is it costs the government a lot of money. Obviously, it could cost them up to $2 billion. And you're right. It was your interview with Jim Flaherty where he questioned what could be a core plank of the Conservative policy. Now, they haven't introduced it yet, but this is part of their rolling out strategy, what to do with the surplus. Justin Trudeau over the weekend was saying, we will not support that. We'd roll back the income splitting. But the question is, what will he do with the surplus? Well, we know Thomas Mulcair, as you just spoke about, talks about a national child care program. The Liberals had once tried to do that. Remember, Ken Dryden tried to push that through.
Yep.
That never got anywhere. The Conservatives will give tax breaks. The Conservative strategy is pretty simple, Amanda. They want to spend every penny of that surplus on tax breaks, so no matter what program an NDP or a Liberal Party introduces, they'll claim, hey, you're throwing us back into deficit. Trudeau's saying, wait a second, we got to invest in education. We've got to invest in infrastructure. But you and I both know this is an election year, so everyone's talking about spending the surplus. They're all turning from Scrooge to Santa, but there's a great sucking sound going on in the revenues, and that's the price of oil.
Oh, the price of
sucking
oil.
Downward, and that surplus in 12 months.
It may well change their plans a great deal. I'll tell you one thing I'm a little bit worried about, and it's something we've seen already, and this is a government that will make tax break plans based on how they sell politically. And the best example of that is, of course, the reduction in the GST, which people still love. And, you know, when you talk to people, even Jim Flaherty, I said to him towards the end of his tenure, you know, come on, just be honest. That was a dumb thing to do. Every economist on the planet says consumption tax good, income tax bad. Right. He said, you know what? People feel it every time they go buy something. We win every single time, and it keeps a little extra dollar in their pocket. We're happy with it.
Sometimes pleasing the electorate is more important than pleasing an economist. But I will say this, for the beloved business folks that watch your program every day, I remember speaking to Jean Chrétien, and I said, you know, when you were going through your those tough eras with Paul Martin, he said, look, I never met with business leaders that often. You know why? They only ever wanted lower tax. No business leader ever came to me and said, hey, please raise taxes to pay for infrastructure. They never said it. So sometimes the lobby groups aren't necessarily that surprising. Yeah, business wants lower tax, for sure. But the question is, how do you govern? And you got to please a lot more groups than just one. You do.
Wouldn't it be nice, though, Evan, if we got a little bit of imagination? And I guess, you know, people, you know, Justin Trudeau can talk about infrastructure, and there's a lot to be done there. We can talk about a national childcare program, but there are some big things we could do in this country. You know, you mentioned how reliant we are on oil. A post-oil plan would be a nice thing to start thinking about. Are we going to get any, do you think, big picture views coming out of these folks?
First of all, a post-oil plan, I don't know if anyone's talking peak oil.
I am. I'm going to keep talking about it.
You can start it. You can, but remember, those peak oil folks were talking about oil at $200 a barrel, like Jeff Rubin. They ain't talking about that. So
it's not peak oil. I think we're one innovation in alternative energy away from people not needing oil. That's what I'm worried about.
You may be right here. I think what will be more important is something Jim Prentice, before he became the Premier of Alberta, talked about, which is an industrial policy.
Yes.
In other words, we have massive infrastructure deficits, and there are genuine, whether it's bridges or whether it's energy issues, there's billions and billions of dollars of projects, and we have no plan on that. The question is, will there be an imaginative plan on that level? Those are big scale issues that will require provinces, federal government, and the public to be involved. There is so far no major plan on that, and you wonder if that's going to come. And you know, listen, if there's a post-oil plan, I'm all for it, but you remember what happened to Stéphane Dion politically when he talked about the green shift. It was tough. I wonder if there's still room now for that kind of policy.
We can call it just an industrial plan. I'm down with that, Evan.
Listen, I don't, labels are
Labels
for jars.
matter. They do. All right. There's your political X factor. Evan, thanks.